You know, some historical events, they're over in a flash. A single afternoon, one decisive moment, and that's it. But the story of that event, well, that can become a battleground for centuries. And today, we're diving into a perfect example of that, the Battle of White Mountain. I mean, just think about that for a second. How is that even possible? An entire army literally collapses in about 60 minutes back on November 8th, 1620. But the story of that collapse, the meaning of it, is still being fought over today in political debates, in online arguments, you name it. So let's get into it. Let's peel back all those layers of myth and memory. So first up, we've got to talk about the popular story. You know, the legend that has been passed down through the centuries. It's this powerful, pretty simple tale of a heroic national tragedy. And it's the version of events that a lot of people think they know. And this really gets to the heart of it. As this Reddit user points out, for so many people, the battle marks the beginning of a 300-year Temno Fair, or Dark Age. The idea is that this was the moment the Czech nation got crushed under foreign rule, losing its freedom, its faith, its entire voice. It's a super emotional narrative of national decline. And man, this story has legs. It's incredibly persistent. You still see it pop up all the time online, especially on anniversaries of the battle. It gets celebrated as this moment when Czechs stood up against oppression. It's the perfect underdog story, right? But, and this is a big but, the reality was way, way more complicated. Okay, so let's dive into the nitty-gritty. Because what actually happened on that chilly plateau just outside of Prague, well, it was less a clean national saga and more of a messy multinational free-for-all. First thing you have to understand is that this battle didn't happen in a vacuum. Not at all. It was a really key moment, but it was just one part of a much bigger, much uglier puzzle, the 30 Years' War. We're talking one of the most brutal and destructive wars in European history. It killed something like 8 million people. Now, this is where that simple story really starts to fall apart. Just take a look at who was actually on the field. It wasn't Czechs versus foreigners, not even close. On the Protestant side, yeah, you had Bohemians, but you also had German leaders and mercenaries from all over Europe. And the Imperial Catholic Army? It was a total European mashup of Germans, Spanish, Italians, Walloons, you name it. This was all about religion and dynastic power, not the kind of nationalism we think of today. And okay, get this. This supposedly epic, nation-defining battle, how long do you think it lasted? About 1 hour. Seriously, 60 minutes. The entire Bohemian army just collapsed. And maybe it's not so surprising. I mean, the mercenaries on both sides hadn't been paid for months, the weather was miserable, and morale was completely in the toilet. In this chart, wow, it says it all. This wasn't some noble last stand. It was a complete and total rout. The Protestant forces were just shattered. We're talking around 4,000 killed or captured, compared to only about 700 on the imperial side. In the span of a single afternoon, the entire Bohemian revolt was effectively crushed. But while the battle itself was incredibly short, the consequences, oh, they were severe and they were long-lasting. And it's right here, in his brutal aftermath, that we find the seeds of that tragic myth. 27. This number is burned into the Czech national memory. It's what every school kid learns. 27 leaders of the revolt publicly executed in Prague's Old Town Square. This was a cold, calculated act of political terror designed to make a gruesome example of them and stamp out any other ideas of rebellion. And the price of this defeat was just immense. The trauma was very, very real. Try to picture this. 5/6 of the country's entire nobility were either killed or forced to flee into exile. Their lands were snatched up and given to loyalists. The Protestant religion was systematically wiped out. The Czech language was pushed aside. And on top of all that, the war that kept raging on would eventually kill about a third of the population. This wasn't just a political shift. It was a deep cultural wound that would fester for hundreds of years. So how in the world does a complete military catastrophe and its horrifying aftermath get a second life? How is it forged into this heroic, enduring national myth? Well, this is where the real information war begins. Right away, the spin machines on both sides went into overdrive. The victorious Catholics, they sold it as a divine miracle, a holy victory delivered by the Virgin Mary herself. The defeated Protestants, especially those in exile, they couldn't sell a victory, so they sold a tragedy. They transformed those 27 executed rebels into martyrs for the true faith, creating this powerful story of noble sacrifice. Okay, now let's jump in our time machine and fast forward about 200 years.
It's the 19th century, and Czech nationalists are searching for a story to rally people around. They dust off that old Protestant martyr narrative and give it a complete makeover. They basically strip out all the complicated religious stuff and reframe the whole thing. And boom, suddenly the Protestant nobles weren't just fighting for their faith. They were brave Czech patriots fighting a foreign oppressor.
And that brings us all the way to today. Because believe it or not, this 400-year-old story is far from being just a dusty history lesson. It has been, and it still is, a potent weapon in modern arguments. I mean, just look at how adaptable this myth has become. In the 19th century, the enemy was Vienna and the Habsburgs. In the 20th, that same story of national betrayal and tragedy was brought up during the crises of 1938 against the Nazis, and then 1948 and 1968 against the Soviets. And in recent years, it's been used in arguments about the role of the church and even to frame the European Union as the new Vienna or Moscow, just another foreign power telling Czechs what to do. And this is the key takeaway, the real reason this myth is so powerful and so sticky. It all comes down to this simple emotional core, the idea that a small nation is constantly being victimized by bigger outside forces who decide its fate, about us, without us. It's a narrative that's so flexible you can just swap in a new enemy whenever you need one. So we end up right back where we started, with a battle that was over and done with in just 1 hour, but whose story has been a battlefield for 4 centuries. It's a powerful reminder that history isn't just a set of facts about what happened. It's about the stories we choose to tell ourselves in the present, and how those stories can become powerful tools or even weapons in the fights we're facing right now.